I never thought student loans would be one of the most complicated parts of the financial plan. And all of a sudden we're there, right? I said that a few years ago, thinking like, it can't get any worse. And now every year I'm like, it's getting worse. It's getting a lot worse. But as we sit here today, the good news is at least we have some clarity. We know what to expect.
For the next 3 years.
For the next 3 years.
Welcome to the Physician Sense Podcast, a podcast designed specifically for physicians, offering a breakdown of complex financial topics to help you develop your financial IQ, further your financial journey, and improve your well-being. Whether you're a medical student, resident, fellow, or attending physician, you're sure to learn something new that will benefit your journey. And now, your hosts, Chad Chubb and Tyler Olson.
Welcome to another episode of the Physician Sense Podcast. I am your co-host, Chad Chubb, joined by the one, the only, my bestie. I always use a Northeast comment. I'm just going to stick with my bestie. My favorite student loan nerd for today's topic, Tyler Olson. I don't want to give away the theme, but I may have given away the theme for this one.
That's okay. People would have seen it on the title anyway, right?
That's true. Should we tell them that we were going to use profanity in the title, but we decided it's probably best not to?
Yeah. Then we'd have to modify the ratings, right? Not for children.
We'd probably lose all of our sponsorships. It would just be a disaster. Goes downhill quickly when you use any type of profanity. So keep it PG, but a topic that has finally heated up. It's funny because the last time we recorded, we said, oh, this could change at any moment. And literally after we hit done recording our last set, we got the notification that I think it was past at that point, but I don't think it was signed yet. We were kind of like in that phase, but we are here, Tyler. We have clarity on student loans, clients, Twitter followers, LinkedIn followers, TikTok followers, all the socials are blowing up. What do we do now with student loans? It has officially happened. What are you hearing on your side? What's the latest? When this goes live, we will be live in October for this one. So we're 2 months past savings interest kicking in. So this topic should really be heating up. So we're going to jump around a little bit today, but what's your current vibe on student loans?
Well, long term, I kind of like that there's only going to be two plans. It'll be IBR and RAP. A lot of people are trying to make decisions about what to do between now and the end of June 2026. And as far as people who are that are on the SAVE plan, I should say, SAVE borrowers are they're encouraged to switch to IBR now. Oh, interesting thing. So this really goes to show that the Department of Education, they're showing every sign that they want to be able to get things accelerated as quickly as possible and get this wrapped up, because I've now had, and now this is in, we're still in July in terms of what this conversation, but I'm sure there will be more of this between now and October. I've had 4 different borrowers let me know that they had existing IBR applications already in, nothing going on. And you may have heard some people say, don't worry about it, just resubmit now. And the thing is, the older IBR app is still active and it's still in the queue, but it's based on older income data. And they have some sort of tool in their process where if they redo it now and use more recent income information, then it processes very fast.
Go figure.
Right. And depending on your situation, if you did this last fall, it could even possibly be based on your 2022 tax return. If you had extended your 2023 tax return and you did this prior to October 15th, I mean, this is really stretching it out, but it could be as early back as 2022 income compared to 2024 tax return income information. That might make a big difference to you, but you're hearing from people that are saying, hey, you should just get it. You should just reapply because then it'll go by faster. And that's true. It is going by faster. And it's because they have some sort of mechanism that if you do it again now with new information, then it's fast. But if you wait, you're still in the queue and they will apparently process it. It's just going to take you longer. So I don't know what to do with that exactly, except on an individual level, you have to weigh what that would mean for you and like what the contrast would be,
I saw some of your tweets about that on it moving a lot faster. And then we had a few clients on our side too that reapplied really in the last week and found out like quickly that it was back in play. To add some structure to this, because we could bounce around on student loan topics forever between you and I, let's think of it in two different ways. So for those individuals that are going for public service loan forgiveness, PSLF, I think this is one of the beauties of having two separate financial advisors, two completely different firms. I assume our answers will be similar as they usually end up being, but what's your current game plan for, you got a client sitting around. They are going for PSLF. Maybe they're just kind of hanging on and save now. Let's use it as our primary example, because probably our best example. Also probably the most questioned example we have. What guidance are you giving right now as we sit here late July?
It's a function of how many months they have left to get the 120. If they're pretty close, we are toying with the idea of at least evaluating the comparison of staying on save, allowing the interest to accumulate. Because if you are going for PSLF, interest accrual does not scare you because that's going to be forgiven anyway. We evaluate staying on save versus what income-driven repayment plan are they eligible for? Because a lot of our clients that are close to the end of 120, they're not eligible for IBR or pay because of the partial hardship requirement. The irony is that once the time passes until next summer, I've been told the IBR partial hardship requirement will be lifted and that anyone who's a current borrower can get on to IBR, but they can't right now. And so their alternative is either stay on save or switch to ICR, which is 20%. And so then it becomes a cash flow question. So we are actively monitoring that. If they're not eligible for IBR or pay because their income is too high, we are looking at just sticking around on save if they're going for PSLF. But of course, at some point, save borrowers are going to be forcibly kicked off. I did a Twitter space with Robert Farrington, the college investor, and he was saying, he's like, his time frame parameter was between December and June.
Okay.
Somewhere in there is when save borrowers will be kicked off forcibly. I can't recall the exact rationale behind that time frame, but for now, for people that are in that scenario where their income is too high, we're hanging out on save.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, it's the one thing too to bring to everyone's attention. It's crazy how I feel like I follow every piece of student loan news so precisely, but then I'll find out something new that just catches me off guard. So while we were on track with the partial financial hardship being dropped, somehow I missed the whole theory of that the payment cap is also getting removed. So the only way to remove partial financial hardship is to remove the payment caps, which that changes a lot of calculations for any household, high income households. So that has been the one that we saw, again, we're late July. That's been the one that has caught us off guard most recently. Did you see that one? I saw you on the screen here. If you're listening to the podcast, you don't get the facial expressions. That nearly as fun. Catch you off guard?
I thought that the cap was not getting removed.
Yeah, I just saw. Let me see if I can find a better source of it.
I'll mention too that, like, for anyone whose income allows them to still get on to pay or IBR, then the decision is based on, is my oldest loan disbursement prior to July 1st, 2014? If it is, then pay would be the lower cost option for you between now and June of next year. Now, when that comes and pay goes away, then you'll have no choice but to switch over to either IBR or RAP. And that is its own comparison unto itself.
So just to go back to that note, this was noted on the one big beautiful bill act, but it removes the IBR payment caps.
Okay.
See, now I feel a little bit better because I know that you got a finger on the pulse at all times too. That's how I emailed my team and I was like, because we talked about it internally a bit. We're like, that's weird. How do you lift, it's crazy that they're like, is this a little window that you can sneak in without partial financial hardship? Does it go back? Does it not go back? I even asked Andrew on the Wealth Kill YouTube. I said, will this apply to pay? At that point, he didn't have an answer yet because I still think some of this will come out. But internally, our team was like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. And now I sent them this email on Friday, actually. We're recording this on Monday. That, well, I guess this answers it. So we actually had the note in there that showed that. But that changes a lot of calculation, especially for the high income households.
Right.
It's like, I feel like the payment caps are one of those things like you either never think about it or it is like a huge difference. I feel like there's never like this middle ground. It's either like, oh, you're far enough below it that you don't worry about it, or you're so far through it that it just gets painful.
Yeah.
And again, you have to be, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh shoot, what's this payment cap mean? The cap has always been the 10-year payment. So whatever your 10-year payment would have been, that was always your cap. That's how we also prove financial hardship. So when that's removed, if you have really high income, based on how they calculate these payments, right? It's essentially using your AGI minus the poverty guidelines, that's your discretionary income number. That number can go up really high. But we've always had this backstop with IBR and pay because of partial financial hardship, where it would always cap you at the 10-year number.
Yeah.
Based on our most recent reading and what we're seeing out there, and again, Tyler and I both kind of just getting through all this, that has since been removed for the IBR plans. I don't think they removed it for pay, but that would also make me think that they're probably never going to remove partial financial hardship for pay because pay is going to be gone by this time next summer.
Yeah, no, that changes the matrix on what is a PSLF friendly scenario.
Yeah, so a lot of math calculations to be had, probably as we get closer to this time next year, even a little bit before that. But to the initial question, we've kind of been in your same ballpark. Ideally, most of our clients that are still going for PSLF, we have a few that would get trapped in that ICR versus SAVE conversation, but a lot of them were in a good spot to get back to an IBR or possibly a pay, because we were, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this too, we were pretty big fans, and we still are, of the PSLF buyback. But now after seeing some of that data on how far backed up it is, that has kind of added a layer to it. And another thing I thought that was interesting that Andrew brought up was he said they've actually seen a few of their customers get the offer back. And you know how like the math has always been, we really didn't know how the number would be calculated. We were just told like it might be from pre-COVID, it might be from post-COVID. But if it can be pre-COVID, the numbers could be really low. He noted that a lot of their numbers were on the high side, to the point where he actually thought they were miscalculated. They were that high. But at that point, you're just like, here's a damn check, right? Get me out of here. Like, I'm done. Like, so they weren't even questioning the math. Like their physician clients were just like, hey, here it is. I'm done. See you later. Adios. Because you're not going to rebuttal it, right? Hey, put me back in the queue. I'll talk to you guys in 2033. So I thought that was interesting. That's kind of changed our conversation with a few of our clients on, hey, instead of relying on PSLF buyback, why don't we start the clock? And then if we can utilize PSLF buyback, great. But let's restart the clock sooner than later, as opposed to relying on this. And again, if the payments end up being more recent payments anyway, we kind of lose the big financial incentive in there that we thought we were going to have.
Yeah, the buyback process is nebulous. And I've seen it a couple of times recently. And the calculations came back high.
Yeah.
So I've seen that too. But it's not enough to like move the needle and decide, you know what, let's invest some more time into this. Yeah. And I think it's important to note that there is a contingent of physicians who direly need PSLF in order to live a life that is, financially rewarding in commensurate with their degree of skill and investment that they've made in their career. So, none of them are unable to eat or like have enough to live. But I think that they can, considering what they do for a living, that they deserve a moderately healthy lifestyle. And in order to have that, they've got to get PSLF. But there are also a lot of docs. There are more ways than one to be able to get not everything that they want, but anything that they want, and prioritize those things with or without PSLF. And so I'm like, I can see where they get to the end of the line, they see this is what my option is. I'm only getting $70,000 forgiven or whatever if it's like lower than they were expecting. But to just have it behind you, like, get this nonsense out of my head, right? So I can see why doctors will do that, because it's like, this will be, I don't want this headache anymore. For physicians that are earlier in their career, that are like still in residency and they're still aiming for PSLF, it's a little bit clearer of a picture. Like, I think the harder stuff right now is for doctors that are at the 120 or like 115, 110.
Yeah.
But for anyone that's like in like the 10s and 20s and 30s, 40s even, they're making 65,000 a year. They could get on pay or IBR depending on when their loans were taken out. And then they'll have to pick either IBR or RAP. And that really just comes down to a comparison of household size and household income. And I think the number is, once your income starts to exceed 80,000, then IBR starts to become more attractive, because it's 150% poverty line threshold, even 15% above that. Even 15%, if you have like multiple children, it can start to make IBR more appealing, because RAP is, a scale of 1 through 10% of adjusted gross income, which is a much lower threshold of where the calculation starts.
Yeah. From us kind of poking around, essentially, even though old IBR is based on 15%, where new IBR is essentially like pays brother or sister, the old IBR being at 15%, oddly enough, with a larger family size, though, even at 15%, you could sneak out a lower payment with old IBR than RAP with a large family, which, again, depends on where you are in your career, right? That's kind of the hard part of this type of, I wouldn't say advice, right? Conversation is that, it's one to many, many. But I was going to add this note in earlier, just like, I make this joke all the time. I don't know if you say anything like this, but, never in a million years when I going through CFP and, I want to be a financial planner when I grow up. I never thought student loans would be one of the most complicated parts of the financial plan. And all of a sudden we're there, right? I said that a few years ago, thinking like, it can't get any worse. And now every year I'm like, it's getting worse. It's getting a lot worse. And again, the hard part is, right, here we are making all these plans for, the next 3 years or so. You have another election. You're like, what do we do now? And it's so hard to give good, trusted advice, because, hey, I mean, we literally almost put this caveat now in all of our emails to our clients, right? This is based on what we know today. And that's just such a hard part, especially for physicians, not only from a career perspective, but, their life. But as we sit here today, the good news is at least we have some clarity. We know what to expect
for the next 3 years.
For the next 3 years. Well, and then, because one of the other topics I want to talk to is talk about is, what if we're not going for PSLF? Don't go there yet, though. But that's an important conversation, right? Because if you're sitting here thinking like, well, gosh, based on these new rules, I'm never going to get PSLF, or I'm never going to get traditional forgiveness. I guess I'll just refinance to a private loan. Well, guess what? In 3 years, we can't undo that. So that's actually probably the hardest part of it. And, even a conversation we have with clients, like, there's a little bit of an insurance premium that you might want to pay to keep federal loans and not go to private. If there's, any type of chance there, if you're like, I'm private practice forever, I'm taking over my family's practice, like that's a different conversation, or they're already private loans. It's a very complicated topic.
Mm-hmm.
More complicated than it needs to be. That's to say the least.
Yeah. This reminds me of moments in planning conversations when if there's a path that might be a little bit more financially painful to getting the debt gone, but it's a lot more of a straight shot, man, it gets a lot more appealing, because just like having to like think about this sort of stuff and like keep like re-strategizing, it is, I mean, it's one thing for you and I to do it on like from an advisor perspective. Well, there's a lot of moments in like analysis that I enjoy because I think it's interesting. But if it's your money or it's your debt, goodness, what a weight. And it would be great to just be like, forget this, like just get it out of here. So I think it's good to have that as at least give it some meaningful consideration to pay it off. Like, even if it's like, well, what am I going to have to sacrifice elsewhere to be able to just pay it off myself? At least consider to see if it's worth it to you.
Yeah, again, you and I think about this because this is what we do for a living, but and it's not just a student loan conversation, right? It's a very big tax decision every single year. If you're in a married spot, are you doing married filing jointly, married filing separately? There's a lot of layers. Are you doing maybe pre-tax investing because you're trying to lower your AGI, or are you taking advantage of Roth because now's a good time to do Roth and you're not worried about it? Like, it's not just like, oh, it's a student loan decision. It has.
Do you live in a community property state?
Which I don't think most people even have any idea how much of an effect that had. And you probably have the same thing. Like, we'll have to talk through that type of filing with certain accountants. So I'm like, hey, actually, it should look like this. Now, again, you got to tell me what to do because I'm not a CPA here, not an EA. I'll start bringing you in for these conversations, Tyler. But like, this is how we understand it, and we got to get this right, because then this is what's going to go into the student loan. And if the right number doesn't get there, it's a hot mess. But let's do the other side of this. You have a client sitting there right now. They're thinking, well, good news is I'm not going for PSLF. I either have federal loans let's just say I have federal loans. I'm in SAVE. I know that we're recording this now again, late July, essentially a week or so, my interest restarts again. What should I be thinking about? What should I be doing?
Not going for PSLF.
Not going for PSLF. Yes, that's the most important part of that question.
To the degree that your household income can readily pay off the debt, like with a 5, 7, 10-year term, I give more weight to the refinance decision, like to that choice. What I tend to do is do a rate comparison and see like, well, what rate would you get on a 5-year term, 7-year term, 10-year term? And like Laurel Road is really good at giving clear options. They can lay out like what the payment would be. And obviously the payment on a 10-year payoff is a lot less than the 5-year. But if the interest rate difference is not substantial, I tend to suggest looking at the 10-year and then aggressively paying at the 5-year rate, or at the 5-year payment amount, if that's workable within the cash flow plan. Because then you're being aggressive, but you're also putting yourself in a position where if things, if your income drops for some reason and not something that your disability insurance could cover, and those would be rare, but like, just say it does, then you at least have the cushion of reducing your payment down to the lower amount. So if you're going to refinance, that's what I tend to suggest doing, just to give you some cushion, because one of the benefits of the federal loans are the income-driven plans. And you could, as long as you stayed in that realm, you could always fall back to that if like it required. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
And like, the higher the income, the more wiggle room there is in the cash flow to make that payment and knock it down, then the lower interest rate that they might capture with a refinance looks more attractive. How about you?
Yeah, I always believe in sets of 3. So we'll always have our clients try to get soft quotes from at least 3 providers. Some places make that easier than others, like a Credible, where you kind of get, I always call it like a student loan marketplace, but very similar. One thing that we have been noting, which I'm sure you do something similar too, but any clients that have federal loans currently and they're not going for PSLF, I like to keep emphasizing this, because remember, once we do this, we cannot undo it, but they're going to get it over to a private loan. If there is accrued interest and they have cash on the sidelines, we do like to try to throw some money at that. So we do like to try to pay that down, kind of avoid some of that negative amortization. Some clients are in a better spot than others to do it. I do love what you said. Hey, if 5 is close to the 10, 10 is close to the 7, always take the longer, but pay off more aggressively. Heaven forbid we need to. We need a little flexibility in the cash flow. We have it. Because as you said, it's not like it's not an IDR plan. Once we sign that, we're signed it. And make sure you always read a promissory note, at least in terms of disability and death. Those are two important things to know. But yeah, we're on a very similar path there on the private loans. This is just a random question I had. This kind of is a different case study than what we just discussed. Going back to what I noted before about that insurance premium, is there a number? I'll give you an example. All right, I'm sitting here right now. I have federal loans at 6.5. I don't think I'm going to go for PSLF because I'm in a private practice. Okay. But there's a chance that I don't like it and I may end up back in academic medicine, but it's not guaranteed. I just got a quote from a private lender for 6, not 6.5, but 6. I give you my details as my financial planner. Do you take the bait there?
And refinance to 6?
Yeah, like what's it was more or less a fun way to think of like, is there I think the total interest is clearly the more important decision here, but is there like a range where you're like, hey, if we don't beat it by at least 1%, I would probably stick with federal loans just because of the extra backings we get by being a federal loan.
Yeah, I mean, 0.5% is not enough.
Okay.
Because if you look at the total interest paid difference, it's not that big of a deal. Like, especially if you're being aggressive. And like the reason why higher interest rates, and if you're at 6.5 on a federal loan, you're someone who is out of training. I think most people that are in training now, unless you're like, neuro or something like really, really long, most of their averages are like closer to 7.
7, yeah.
Because the grad plus loans that anyone took out, I mean, the latest, I think those are at 9. It's crazy high. Anyway, I think the interest rates get a lot of attention because, med students with their unsubsidized loans, interest is accruing, they make nothing. It continues to accrue and in residency, and they don't have the money to pay it down. And it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And so that's why those interest rate expenses, why they hurt and why they get so much attention. But when you transition to like, we're going to pay this off, or at least we think we might pay this off because I'm going into private practice, like this hypothetical person that you mentioned, the rate difference, it matters. But if you look at the amount that it's actually saving you, you're like, is that financial plan altering? No. So 0.5%, no way. It's got to be at least 1% difference. And I prefer it being more than that because you're like, especially if you're talking about someone that they might go back into academic medicine, or they might want to go work in a nonprofit. And and it's not even just academic medicine, like depending on the state that they're in, like if they're in Texas or California, they don't have to go back into academic medicine. They could work inside a nonprofit hospital for a private practice and qualify for PSLF. So you really there has to be a strong reason that PSLF is just not going to be a viable option for you, especially the greater that the debt is. So it's hard because it's like, you're trying to accomplish two things at the same time. And sometimes they're in agreement, and then sometimes they're like diametrically opposed to each other. So, but as far as the rate difference, yeah, no, 0.5%, no way.
Yeah. For fun, I typed in $100,000 loan, and then I said a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year loan. I use 7% across the board. Usually you wouldn't see that, right? You hopefully would see a little bit lower at that 5-year end. But just to go show you that, because that's the total interest is the important thing here. And you're going to have a lot less total interest on the short term, 5 versus longer term, 10 in this example. But essentially a 5-year, you're paying about $19,000 in interest. If that's all the same scenario, but a 10-year, you're paying about $40,000 in interest.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, don't pay attention to the interest rate, but your duration of the loan with the interest rate is going to give you your total interest. That's where the math needs to happen. And I agree with your thinking too. Especially if there's a chance of PSLF, like there needs to be a real big financial incentive for us to make that switch. But I like to ask in case study format. So, all right, we're usually at our sweet spot here, about 30 minutes or so. I feel like we did a good job on the updates. I feel like we'll get some good questions on this too. Anything to add in closing?
Nothing meaningful. I would just start rambling, and I don't want to do that. Just be intentional about your decision making process, docs. It's not easy, and it's not a cookie cutter decision. So invest in the knowledge to make a good decision for you. That's it.
Well said. Well said. Questions, comments, that we love to answer them, send them our way. Now that we have some context, we can certainly dig into more unique situations for student loans. So keep sending those our way. Send them to Tyler. He's the much bigger social presence, but I'll catch you on the next one, Todd.
Sounds good. See you, Chad.
This information is for general purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific professional financial or tax advice, as individual concerns vary. Please see a financial professional, CPA, and/or an attorney in regards to your own individual situation. Wealth Heals Advisory Services and Financial Planning offered through Vicus Capital Inc., a federally registered investment advisor. Olson Consulting LLC, offering advisory services and financial planning, is a state-registered investment advisor.